He stood near the janitor's closet, quiet, still, almost invisible. His boots were caked in dried mud, his flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, and he held nothing but a silent presence, the kind that rarely gets noticed in a room like this. Around him, million-dollar machines blinked with warning lights. Engineers whispered in hushed frustration, and overhead lights flickered as if mimicking the tension hanging in the air. Grav Systems, once a model of innovation, now stood frozen by its own creation. A $6 million automated packaging unit that hadn't run in 2 weeks. Experts had flown in. High-paid consultants had hovered over the control panels. Nothing worked. Nothing moved. And this morning, the CEO himself had flown in on a private jet to fix it all. Leonard Graves walked in like a man about to host a press conference, not solve an engineering nightmare. His watch sparkled like a trophy. His smile was polished. For the cameras. He didn't care about the machine. He cared about the moment. And when none of his experts could make that machine purr, he scanned the room like a king surveying clowns. Then his eyes locked on the boy near the mop bucket. "If no one in this entire building can fix it," he said, voice laced with sarcasm, "maybe we should let someone from the cleaning crew give it a try." It was a setup, one of those viral moments meant to make him look bold, edgy, unpredictable. The kind of clip that racks up shares online. And the crowd, desperate for relief from the tension, laughed. Cameras were rolling. Engineers chuckled nervously. And in the corner, the boy, just 16, raised his head. His name was Noah Whitaker. No credentials, no clipboard, no uniform. Just boots, flannel, and eyes that didn't flinch. His Uncle Roy, the night janitor, stepped forward in panic. "Sir, he's just here to visit. He's not—" But Leonard cut him off with a raised hand. "Let the kid try. It's just a dead machine, right?" And with that, a line was crossed. This was no longer about fixing anything. This was about spectacle, embarrassment, control. But what happened next wasn't part of the script. Noah didn't laugh. He didn't hesitate. He walked forward slowly, past senior engineers and top-level managers who parted for him like unsure dominoes. Some whispered, some smirked. Some waited for the boy to trip, to freeze, to fail. But he didn't. He stepped up to the machine and gently placed his hand on its steel side, like he was greeting an old friend. For a second, the entire factory held its breath. Nobody in that room had any idea who he was, or who his father was, or what kind of knowledge this quiet teenager carried deep in his bones. Because in less than 5 minutes, Noah Whitaker would silence that entire room, not with words, not with ego, but with precision, insight, and a truth nobody saw coming. This was more than a broken machine, this was a reckoning, and it started with a boy in muddy boots. Noah stood still as dozens of eyes locked onto him, some amused, some confused, but most of them doubtful. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't part of any team, didn't wear a badge, didn't hold a title. All he had were scuffed boots, dirt-lined fingernails, and a backpack slung over one shoulder like he was heading to class instead of a mechanical war zone. Yet here he was, standing at the center of Grav Systems' biggest failure, with a CEO pointing at him like a prop in a viral skit. Leonard Graves leaned back casually, the corners of his mouth curled with the confidence of someone who'd already written the ending. "Let's give the farm boy a shot," he said, loud enough for every phone in the room to catch it. "Maybe he'll get lucky." His voice was drenched in showmanship, each syllable dripping with sarcasm, the kind that made it clear this wasn't about solving anything. This was content, a circus act. Someone in the back hit record. A few others followed, cameras up, grins wide, ready to watch a 16-year-old make a fool of himself. To them, Noah was the punchline, a quick laugh on a hard day. And maybe that's what he looked like at first glance, just another kid who wandered too far from the janitor's closet. But when Noah stepped forward, the mood shifted. Just a fraction. Just enough. He walked slowly toward the $6 million machine, not hesitating, not rushing, every step deliberate like he belonged there. No nerves, no fear, just the kind of quiet focus that made even the chuckles die off. He reached the machine, ran a hand gently along the cold metal surface, and then paused in front of the diagnostic screen. Behind him, Leonard crossed his arms. "Let's see what the prodigy's got," he said, chuckling under his breath. A few engineers rolled their eyes. Someone whispered, "Should we stop this?" Another voice muttered, "It's harmless. Let the kid touch a button or two." But Noah didn't touch a single button. Not at first. He squinted at the screen, reading data in silence. Then he crouched beside the base of the machine, brushing off dust to reveal a junction panel. Its screws barely tightened, its cover slightly ajar. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, worn screwdriver. Not a fancy one, just a basic tool, the kind used 100 times over in barns and sheds, not million-dollar facilities. He unscrewed the panel, every motion steady. The room had gone strangely quiet. No more laughter, no more sarcasm. Just the sound of Noah's screwdriver, clicking against steel. When he pulled the panel off, a tangle of wires stared back. Most people saw chaos. He saw a story. These wires were installed backward, he murmured. A couple of engineers leaned in, exchanging glances. One frowned, then slowly walked over. Noah pointed to a specific connection. "The polarity markers are reversed," he explained calmly. "Whoever set this up either misread the schematic or didn't double-check alignment." There was a pause. The kind of silence where you can hear the weight of people realizing they may have missed something a teenager just caught with his bare eyes. He unclipped 2 wires, flipped their connectors, then gently adjusted a small sensor to align with the guide track. One of the executives near Leonard started to object. "Hey, he really shouldn't be." But Leonard raised a hand, suddenly more intrigued than amused. The cameras were still rolling. And this? This was turning into good content. Noah tapped the reset switch. 1 second. Nothing. 2 seconds. Still dead. 3. A hum. It started low, like a growl building in the belly of the beast. Lights flickered, then steadied. Gears that had frozen for weeks began to spin like silk threads on a loom. The conveyor belt shivered, then rolled into motion with mechanical grace. Diagnostic lights blinked green, all of them. Not a flicker of red or error. It wasn't just working. It was perfect. The factory erupted, not into cheers, but into gasps. Audible disbelief. Phones trembled in stunned hands as the impossible unfolded in real time. You could see mouths hanging open, engineers blinking as if their eyes were lying. Even Clara Donnelly, senior engineer, 20 years in the business, covered her mouth. Leonard's smile cracked. He took a step forward, trying to regain control of the moment. "Well, beginner's luck," he said too loudly, voice tight. But Clara shook her head slowly, her voice just above a whisper. That wasn't luck. Her eyes stayed locked on Noah. That was expertise. Noah stood up, brushing dust from his jeans like it was any other Tuesday. His face was calm, but behind the calm was something undeniable. Confidence, not arrogance, not showmanship, just quiet certainty. He didn't need applause. He didn't need anyone to clap for him. The machine working was enough. Clara walked over. "How did you know what to look for?" she asked. There was genuine curiosity in her tone, a softness, even a little awe. Noah shrugged lightly. "I helped my dad build something like this back home, on the farm." Leonard tilted his head, confused. "Who's your father?" Noah turned to him. For the first time, he looked the CEO directly in the eye. Calm, clear, unshaken. Cole Whitaker. And just like that, the room changed. You could feel the shift in oxygen. A name. That name. It hit the room like a silent explosion. The laughter, gone. The doubt, vaporized. Somewhere in the back, a door opened, and through it walked a man tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered hands and a stare that had seen too much to be impressed. Cole Whitaker, the engineer whose designs were studied in classrooms, The man who once led the innovation of industrial systems across 3 continents, before vanishing after an accident, leaving only whispers behind. Now, he was here, in work boots, watching his son silence an empire, and the CEO, the man who made a joke out of a boy in muddy boots, he suddenly wasn't smiling anymore. Clara Donnelly didn't speak right away. She was still processing what had just unfolded, trying to wrap her seasoned mind around the fact that a 16-year-old had solved what 24 professionals couldn't. The hum of the machine still echoed in the background, a steady rhythm that now felt like a drum roll to something even bigger. Then finally she said it, barely above a whisper, but loud enough to ripple through the stunned silence. That wasn't luck. That was brilliance. It wasn't just a compliment. It was a confession, a surrender. The words carried weight, and when they landed, they shifted the mood in the room once more. Engineers who had laughed now leaned forward, uncertain. Executives checked their phones as if expecting some explanation to magically appear. And Leonard's polished grin had hardened. There was something sharp in his eyes now, something uneasy. Clara stepped closer to Noah. Her posture wasn't one of superiority anymore, but of curiosity, even reverence. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked. Noah looked up, brushing off the last bit of grease from his hands. His voice was calm. "My dad," he said. "I helped him build systems like this, back on our farm." Leonard raised an eyebrow. He still thought this was salvageable, some lucky farm hack passed down over weekend projects. "And who's your dad exactly?" Noah's reply came without hesitation. No theatrics, no build-up. Cole Whitaker. The air changed. Sharp. Instant. The kind of change you feel more than hear. A collective intake of breath. A pause in time. Then, silence. The name hit the room like a thunderclap. 100 conversations from the past collided at once. The name wasn't just familiar, it was legendary. Cole Whitaker wasn't just an engineer. He was the engineer, the kind they referenced in training manuals. The mind behind some of the most efficient packaging systems used across North America. The architect of breakthroughs that pushed industries forward. And then, he disappeared. Noah didn't have to explain. The look on every face told him they already knew. Leonard's mouth opened slightly, then closed. His hands twitched at his sides. "Cole Whitaker?" he repeated, suddenly quieter. "That Cole Whitaker?" Behind the crowd, the factory doors creaked open. Bootsteps echoed down the polished floor, slow and steady. Heads turned. A few gasped, and then they saw him. Cole Whitaker walked into the room not like a ghost returning, but like a man who had never left. Broad-shouldered, tall and rugged in a way no corporate executive could imitate. His face was marked by time and labor, but his eyes, sharp, intelligent, deeply focused, hadn't aged a day. His flannel shirt matched his son's. His presence was undeniable. And just like that, the joke had collapsed. Leonard, now visibly rattled, tried to collect himself. He extended a hand. "Mr. Whitaker, we had no idea your son was here." Cole stopped a few feet away from his son, giving him a glance that was half pride, half something deeper, something ancient. Then he looked at Leonard's hand, but didn't shake it. He looked at the machine humming quietly, then at the stunned crowd, and finally he spoke. "Noah's exactly where he belongs." The words didn't echo. They settled, like anchors in water. Leonard shifted his weight, the sweat now visible on his forehead. "Of course, it's just quite a surprise." Clara stepped back, still watching Noah. "You learned from him?" she asked, motioning toward Cole. Noah nodded. "He taught me everything. We didn't have fancy labs or textbooks. Just broken tractors, salvaged parts, and late nights in the barn, with a flashlight and a busted socket wrench." The room was still. Nobody doubted him now. The clarity in his voice made that impossible. Cole crossed his arms. "After the accident, I couldn't do much field work. We kept the farm alive, but there was no room for waste. Everything had to run, had to be fixed. Noah learned by necessity, not theory. Out there you don't get to call it when something breaks. You solve it or you lose the crop. It wasn't just a backstory, it was a revelation. They'd thought Noah was some lucky guesser, a one-hit fluke. But this wasn't luck. This was lived experience, real-world skill, blood and dirt knowledge. His education wasn't found in ivy-covered halls. It was written in the grease under his nails and the cold nights spent breathing into numb fingers while tightening wires in a windstorm. Leonard tried again. Well, clearly your son is very talented. We're always open to new minds, especially those with unexpected backgrounds. But it was too late. Everyone in the room had seen it. The moment when power shifted, when arrogance buckled under the weight of quiet competence, when the punchline rewrote the punch. Noah glanced at his father, who gave him a simple nod. No theatrics, no grand speeches, just the unspoken bond between two men who had fought to stay afloat. Not for applause, but for survival. That kind of bond can't be manufactured in boardrooms. They thought he was just a farm kid, Clara murmured under her breath, more to herself than anyone else. Turns out he was a legacy. And that's when the realization truly set in. Not just for Leonard, not just for the engineers, but for the entire room. This wasn't a one-time moment. It wasn't a gimmick. It was the beginning of something bigger. Because Noah Whitaker wasn't a janitor's guest. He wasn't a prop in a CEO's social media stunt. He was the son of a legend. And he carried not just the name, but the fire that built it. Legacy, it turned out, doesn't wear a suit. It wears muddy boots. For a long, frozen second, no one moved. The room had just watched a teenager fix a multi-million-dollar machine in minutes, something entire teams of senior engineers couldn't do in weeks. Then came the name, Cole Whitaker. And now, both father and son stood side by side, quiet and composed, while the CEO who mocked them began to unravel under the pressure of his own performance. Leonard Graves cleared his throat, trying to regain the room. Mr. Whitaker, Noah, he said carefully, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. This company, well, we're clearly in need of minds like yours. If you're both willing, we'd love to have you stay on as consultants, or something more permanent. His tone had shifted from mockery to negotiation. He wasn't making content anymore. He was making a desperate offer. Cole glanced at his son but didn't speak. It was Noah who answered first. We're not here for titles, he said plainly. We just want to make things work. And that was the beginning. In the weeks that followed, Grav Systems transformed, quietly at first, then all at once. Noah didn't just fix the broken machine. He rebuilt it. He went through the diagnostics line by line, every cable, every sensor, checking for inefficiencies. He redesigned internal systems, rewrote parts of the firmware, and reworked the power routing to prevent future shutdowns. By the end of the second week, the machine wasn't just operational, it was outperforming its original specs. Word spread fast. Clara Donnelly, the senior engineer who had first recognized Noah's gift, became his closest ally inside the company. In meetings, when board members raised eyebrows at a teenager sitting at the innovation table, Clara cut through the skepticism with facts, data, and results. Noah didn't just repair a failure, she told the board during a tense review session. He created a better version of what our top-tier team couldn't get running. You don't ignore that kind of vision. You follow it. Her voice carried weight, and so did the numbers. The company's production rate jumped 22% in 1 month. Downtime dropped by nearly half. The new modifications Noah introduced were scalable, replicable, and cost-saving, the board noticed. So did the press. News started to leak, first through internal memos, then tech blogs, and finally major industry outlets. Janitor's nephew reinvents Grav's flagship machine, one headline read. Another followed. From barn tools to boardroom solutions, who is Noah Whitaker? Suddenly, the boy who once stood by the janitor's closet became the most talked about figure in the company. but not everyone was celebrating. Leonard Graves watched the growing attention with gritted teeth. The narrative was slipping from his hands. What began as a PR stunt had become a power shift, and the board could feel it. They started asking questions. Why did it take a teenager to see what the entire engineering division couldn't? Why was leadership so focused on optics instead of outcomes? Leonard tried to spin the story, to recenter himself as the visionary who gave the boy a chance. But footage of the original moment, his mocking tone, the laughter, the farm boy comment had already gone viral. People weren't seeing a CEO lifting up a genius. They were seeing a leader who nearly laughed him out of the room. Then came the day the board called a closed-door meeting, and when the doors reopened, Leonard Graves was no longer CEO. The official statement read like most, a shift in leadership to align with the company's future. But inside the factory, everyone knew the truth. The man who had dismissed the kid in boots had been outpaced by the very mind he underestimated. And in Leonard's place, a new structure. Clara was promoted to Chief Innovation Officer. Noah Whitaker returned as a senior advisor. And Noah, yes, the janitor's kid, was offered leadership over a brand new division. Grav Next, a team built to focus on sustainable tech and breakthrough engineering, led by young voices with practical genius. At 16, he was now the youngest, lead innovator in the company's history. But Noah didn't carry himself like a prodigy. He never asked for the spotlight. He didn't wear a suit or give rousing speeches. He just showed up, sleeves rolled, ideas ready. His work ethic became legend. He was first in, last out, always building, always listening, and slowly, the culture began to shift. People who once felt invisible, junior engineers, interns, warehouse workers, started offering ideas, and they were heard. Because if a farm kid could lead a tech renaissance, maybe their voices mattered too. Inside the company, his title was Lead Developer, Grav Next. But to everyone else, he was something more. He was proof. Proof that brilliance doesn't always come with a resume. Proof that the underestimated often carry the greatest vision. Proof that character, grit, and hands-on wisdom could build something better. He didn't just fix a machine, Clara said in an interview that aired nationally. He rebuilt a legacy, and that legacy wasn't just mechanical. It was human. It was cultural. Noah had turned Grav Systems into something it had long forgotten how to be. Hungry, honest, and alive. One afternoon, weeks after the power shift, Noah stood in front of the same machine he had fixed on day one. A new intern asked him why he kept revisiting it. He smiled, because this is where everything started. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was a reminder, a symbol. The boy who once stood silent with mud on his boots was now leading a movement. And he hadn't screamed or forced his way in. He earned every inch with calm focus and undeniable truth. And behind it all, there was still that quiet fire in his eyes. The one that didn't need applause. The one that remembered the farm, the barn, the nights with his dad and a socket wrench. That was the real fuel. And as Grav Next prepared for its first product launch under Noah's leadership, one thing became clear. This wasn't a temporary rise. It wasn't viral fame. It was foundation. The janitor's kid was now irreplaceable, and this was only the beginning. The factory looked different now, not because the walls had changed or the machines had been replaced, but because the energy inside had shifted. Where there was once tension, now there was focus. Where there was silence, now there was respect. And at the heart of it all stood a young man with calm eyes, rolled up sleeves, and dirt still sometimes under his nails. Noah Whitaker was no longer just the kid who fixed a broken system. He was the one leading a better one. Everywhere he walked, people nodded, not out of obligation, but out of admiration. Engineers twice his age asked for his input. Executives sat forward in meetings when he spoke. Interns watched him with wide eyes, not just because he was brilliant, but because he listened, really listened. Then, one chilly morning, his phone rang. The name on the screen stopped him. Leonard Graves. For a moment, Noah hesitated, but he answered. Leonard's voice was different now, measured, respectful. Not the arrogant ringmaster from weeks ago, but a man who had learned something the hard way. He didn't ask for forgiveness, he didn't spin a story. He simply said, "Noah, we're building a new initiative, focused on sustainable industrial tech. We need someone who understands more than code, someone who understands people, systems, the big picture. We need you to lead it." Noah didn't ask about the title. He didn't ask about the salary. He said yes, not for the power, not for the spotlight, but for the mission. Later that night, he stood alone outside the factory. The cold air reminded him of home. Those nights on the farm, flashlight between his teeth, grease on his fingers, his father guiding his hands. Not with lectures, with trust. Whitaker never pushed Noah to be someone else. He just gave him the space to become, through failure, through effort, through persistence. And now, everything his father had poured into him, every lesson, every late night, every wire and wrench was alive inside the machines he'd helped reimagine. At the company's annual assembly, Noah was invited to speak. He stood in front of hundreds, workers, board members, new recruits, and said simply, "Innovation must serve people, and belief must start from within." The room went silent, hanging on every word. It wasn't a speech. It was a promise. Afterwards, Noah walked the floor one more time. The machines now ran smooth as breath, quiet, efficient, alive. Not one person doubted him anymore. Not one voice questioned if he belonged. He looked around, not with fear, but with faith. This wasn't the end of his story. It was just the beginning. Would you believe in someone like Noah? Would you risk it all for someone nobody believed in? Comment below. The next chapter of Noah's journey drops soon. Subscribe if you believe talent has no zip code.